Before we begin the story, let us know where you're watching from by leaving a comment below. If you enjoy this video, don't forget to like and subscribe. Have a wonderful day. Enjoy the story. Chapter 1. The Rose Among Thorns. Park City, Utah, stood as a breathtaking paradise nestled within the embrace of the majestic Wasatch Mountains. In autumn, the landscape transformed into a canvas of amber, gold, and crimson, drawing visitors from across the country to witness nature's spectacular display. Against this stunning backdrop lived Amara, a young woman whose beauty rivaled the mountains themselves. With smooth, ebony skin that seemed to glow with inner light, eyes deep and expressive as mountain lakes, and a smile that could melt the winter snow, Amara possessed the kind of beauty that stopped conversation mid-sentence. Yet, it was her gentle spirit and kind heart that truly set her apart in a town where wealth and appearance often determined one's worth. Orphaned at 10, when her parents' car skidded off an icy mountain road, Amara had known profound loss from an early age. Her aunt, a kind but frail woman, had raised her with love and wisdom, teaching her resilience and independence. But fate had more hardship in store. On Amara's 20th birthday, her aunt succumbed to the illness that had plagued her for years, leaving the young woman truly alone in the world. "Never let sorrow close your heart, Amara," her aunt had whispered in her final days. "Even the harshest winter gives way to spring." Those words became Amara's mantra as she built a life from the fragments of her broken past. Using the modest inheritance her aunt left, she opened Mountain Haven, a charming tuck shop on Park City's main thoroughfare. The small wooden building, with its wide porch and colorful wildflower boxes, quickly became a favorite among tourists seeking authentic mountain treasures. Inside, Amara created a sanctuary of beautiful objects: hand-carved wooden figurines, delicate crystal snowflakes, paintings of the surrounding landscapes, and homemade preserves from local fruits. Each item was selected with care, each display arranged with an artist's eye for beauty and balance. "There's something magical about this place," tourists often remarked, unaware that the magic stemmed from the shopkeeper herself, a young woman who had experienced life's deepest sorrows yet chose to create beauty wherever she went. At 25, Amara lived alone in a small wooden cabin a kilometer from her shop. The modest dwelling, with its stone fireplace and hand-hewn furniture, reflected her appreciation for craftsmanship and simplicity. In the evenings, she would sit on her porch, watching the alpenglow paint the mountains in shades of rose and gold, finding solace in nature's grandeur. Though many men in Park City, from wealthy visitors to local workers, attempted to court her, Amara kept her heart carefully guarded. The losses she had endured had taught her that attachment brought pain, that loving meant risking everything. So she poured her passion into her shop and her small garden, creating a life that was peaceful, if not complete. "You're too beautiful to be alone," Mrs. Larson, an elderly neighbor, often told her. "A flower should be admired, not hidden away." Amara would smile at such comments, but offer no promises. Her beauty had always felt more like a burden than a blessing, drawing attention when she craved authenticity, attracting desire when she longed for understanding. On this particular October day, as golden leaves spiraled down from the aspens and the air carried the first crisp hint of winter, Amara sensed something different in the atmosphere. The sky to the west had begun to darken prematurely, massive clouds building over the mountain peaks like celestial fortresses. "Storm's coming," observed Liam, the barista from the coffee shop next door, as he stopped by Mountain Haven during his break. His eyes lingered on Amara longer than necessary as he added, "Might be a big one. Weather Service issued warnings for tonight." "I've weathered plenty of storms," Amara replied, arranging a display of hand-knitted scarves near the window. The cold light filtering through the glass highlighted her elegant profile, the gentle curve of her neck as she bent to her task. "This one looks different," Liam persisted, clearly reluctant to end the conversation. "They're saying potential for flooding in the lower elevations. Power outages, too." Amara glanced outside, noting how the light had changed, taking on that peculiar golden quality that often preceded significant weather events. The distant mountains were now obscured by dark clouds, and the wind had begun to pick up, sending leaves skittering along the sidewalk. "I'll close early," she conceded. "Thank you for the warning." As Liam left, Amara turned her attention to the elderly couple examining crystal ornaments in the corner of her shop. Something in the atmosphere, a charged expectancy beyond the gathering storm, made her pulse quicken slightly. Years of solitude had attuned her to the rhythms of her mountain home, and something about this day felt portentous, as though the changing weather heralded more than just rain and wind. Chapter 2. When Thunder Speaks. By late afternoon, the storm's approach had become unmistakable. Wind gusted down the street with increasing force, bending the ornamental trees and sending unsecured items tumbling. The temperature dropped precipitously, and heavy raindrops began to strike the shop's windows with audible force. As the last customers hurried away with their purchases, Amara moved efficiently through her closing routine. She secured the more delicate items, counted the day's earnings, and prepared the deposit for the bank. Outside, the storm gathered fury with alarming speed, rain now falling in sheets that obscured the view of buildings across the street. Lightning flashed, briefly illuminating the shop in stark white light before plunging it back into premature dusk. The answering thunder arrived almost instantly, a deafening crack that seemed to shake the very foundations of the building. Amara flinched despite herself, her usual composure momentarily fractured by nature's display of raw power. As she contemplated the treacherous journey home, her bicycle the only transportation she owned, the shop's lights flickered ominously. Once, twice, then darkness descended as power failed throughout the district. In the sudden gloom, broken only by irregular flashes of lightning, the familiar confines of Mountain Haven took on an almost otherworldly quality. Amara located the emergency lantern kept beneath the counter, its warm glow creating a small circle of comfort in the darkness. The storm's ferocity had exceeded even Liam's warnings. Rain lashed against the windows with relentless force, driven horizontally by wind that howled through the historic buildings of downtown Park City. The street beyond her shop had transformed into a shallow river as drainage systems struggled to cope with the deluge. "I'll wait it out," she decided, speaking aloud to hear something besides the storm's fury. "It has to pass eventually." But as minutes stretched to an hour with no diminishment in the tempest's rage, Amara resigned herself to spending the night on the shop's small sofa. She had just arranged a makeshift bed of decorative pillows when headlights cut through the rain-blurred window. A vehicle moving slowly down the flooded street, fighting against the wind and water. To her surprise, the car, an expensive black sedan that spoke of wealth and sophistication, pulled to a stop directly in front of Mountain Haven. Through curtains of rain, she watched as the driver's door opened and a tall figure emerged, immediately buffeted by wind and water as he made his way toward her shop. The man who soon stood, dripping on the threshold of Mountain Haven, was unlike anyone Amara had encountered in Park City. Beneath the rain-darkened coat and water-slicked hair was a face that belonged on magazine covers. Strong cheekbones, a determined jaw, and eyes the color of burnished amber that seemed to assess everything with keen intelligence. His height alone commanded attention, but it was the quiet confidence he exuded, even while standing half-drenched, that truly captured Amara's notice. "I apologize for the intrusion," he said, his voice a rich baritone that somehow carried easily over the storm's cacophony. "My GPS failed in this weather, and I can't seem to locate the guest house I'd reserved." Amara held her lantern higher, illuminating them both in its golden glow. "Most places will be fully booked because of the autumn festival. Which guest house were you trying to find?" "The Aspen Lodge," he replied, running a hand through his wet hair in a gesture that seemed both casual and calculated. "That's on the other side of town," Amara informed him, "and with the flooding, several roads are likely impassable now." As if to emphasize her point, a bolt of lightning split the sky outside, followed by thunder that shook the shop windows, with enough force to make the crystal displays chime softly. The man glanced back at the tempest, his expression resolute, yet tinged with uncertainty. "I'm Ethan Carter," he said, turning back to her and extending his hand. "And you are?" "Amara Grace," she responded, taking his hand briefly. The contact sent an unexpected current through her, warming blood that had chilled in the storm's damp embrace. "Your shop is charming," Ethan remarked, his gaze sweeping over the displays visible in the lantern light, "though I imagine it shows better with proper lighting." A small smile tugged at Amara's lips. "Most things do." Another violent gust of wind drove rain against the windows with such force it sounded like gravel. Ethan frowned, moving to peer outside at his expensive sedan, now sitting in water that reached halfway up its tires. "This isn't letting up," he observed unnecessarily. Something in his expression, A brief flicker of vulnerability beneath the composed exterior triggered an impulse Amara rarely indulged. Later she would wonder if it was compassion or something more elemental that prompted her next words. "I have a cabin about 1 kilometer from here," she said, surprising herself with the offer. "You're welcome to wait out the storm there. It's small but dry." Ethan's eyes met hers, searching for something. Ulterior motives, perhaps? Or signs of insincerity? Finding neither, his expression softened. "That's extraordinarily kind," he said, "but I wouldn't want to impose." "It's not an imposition," Amara replied with more confidence than she felt. "It's a storm shelter. I'd offer the same to anyone in need during weather like this." Ethan studied her a moment longer, then nodded. "Thank you, I accept." He gestured toward his car. "I can drive us, if you'll navigate." Chapter 3. The journey to Amara's cabin became a harrowing test of skill and nerve. Ethan maneuvered his luxury sedan through streets transformed into treacherous waterways, his hands steady on the wheel even as debris washed across their path. Amara directed him along less flooded back roads, tension building in her chest, each time lightning illuminated their surroundings with stark blue-white brilliance. "Left at the next fork," she instructed, her voice remaining calm despite the anxiety churning beneath her composed exterior. "My place is just beyond that stand of aspens." As they approached, her modest cabin emerged from the darkness, a small but sturdy structure of timber and stone that seemed to have grown organically from the mountainside. Ethan pulled as close to the porch as possible, then turned to Amara. "Ready? We'll have to make a dash for it." With a nod, she prepared herself. On a count of 3, they both exited the vehicle, instantly drenched as they sprinted toward the shelter of the porch. The wind drove the rain sideways, stinging their faces and hands. Ethan placed a protective arm around Amara's shoulders as they climbed the 3 wooden steps, a gesture so natural neither seemed to register its intimacy. Inside, they stood dripping onto the polished wooden floor until Amara found and lit several oil lamps, their warm glow spreading through the cabin's main room and revealing its simple elegance. A stone fireplace dominated one wall, flanked by bookshelves filled with well-loved volumes. Comfortable furniture, arranged for conversation rather than television viewing, created an atmosphere of genuine hospitality. "The power's likely out here too," she explained, gesturing toward the dark fixtures. "But we won't lack for warmth or light." With practiced efficiency, Amara built a fire, while Ethan, at her insistence, changed into dry clothes she provided, garments left behind by her late uncle that fit his tall frame reasonably well. The simple act of hospitality established a curious domesticity between them. Strangers transformed into something more by circumstances and shared vulnerability. As the fire's warmth began to permeate the small space, they found themselves seated before it with mugs of steaming tea, the storm's continued fury only emphasizing the sanctuary they had created within the cabin's walls. "I should thank the storm," Ethan said, his voice soft in the firelit room. "Without it, I'd never have seen this side of Park City or met its most intriguing resident." Amara felt a blush warm her cheeks and was grateful for the dim lighting. "Flattery," she teased. "That, too," he conceded with a smile that transformed his serious face. "But I meant what I said. There's something special about this place. About you." Ethan's directness caught Amara off guard. In Park City's social landscape, men typically approached her with practiced lines and transparent intentions. His simple statement, delivered without artifice, somehow penetrated defenses long maintained. "You don't know me," she reminded him gently, watching the firelight play across his features. "I know enough," he replied, his gaze steady. "I know you opened your home to a stranger during a dangerous storm. I know you've created a space of genuine beauty and warmth." He gestured around the cabin. "These things speak volumes about a person's character." Another crash of thunder punctuated his words, the cabin trembling slightly with its force. Outside, the storm seemed to gather new energy, wind howling around the eaves with increased ferocity. "What brings you to Park City?" Amara asked, steering the conversation to safer territory. "Business or pleasure?" "Both, ideally," Ethan answered, settling more comfortably into his chair. "I develop sustainable luxury properties, resorts and residential communities designed to work with the natural environment rather than against it." As he described his vision for responsible development, Amara found herself drawn not just to his words, but to the passion behind them. Here was a man whose wealth and privilege could have divorced him from reality, yet who spoke of environmental stewardship and community obligation with genuine conviction. Their conversation flowed effortlessly, from environmental ethics to literature, from music to childhood memories. In the cocoon created by the storm and firelight, they discovered unexpected commonalities despite their different backgrounds. When Ethan spoke of losing his parents to illness in his mid-20s, Amara felt the barriers around her heart shift slightly. Here was someone who understood loss, who had rebuilt a life from grief's ashes just as she had done. "It changes you," she said softly, "losing everyone." "It does," he agreed, his eyes reflecting firelight and something deeper. "Makes you careful about letting people close." The simple acknowledgement of their shared caution created a paradoxical intimacy between them. As midnight approached, their conversation continued, neither seemingly willing to end this unexpected connection. Outside, the storm reached new heights of fury, wind howling around the cabin's corners like a living entity, and rain lashed against the windows with such violence it seemed the glass might shatter. When lightning struck somewhere very close enough that the accompanying thunder was not a separate event, but a simultaneous explosion of sound and light, Amar startled visibly. Without hesitation, Ethan moved to sit beside her on the small sofa, his presence solid and reassuring. "Just the storm," he said gently, his arm coming around her shoulders. But they both knew it wasn't just the storm that had heightened Amara's senses, made her acutely aware of Ethan's proximity, of the subtle scent of his skin beneath the borrowed clothes, of the way firelight cast his features into classical relief. Another thunderclap shook the cabin to its foundations, and Amara found herself instinctively turning toward him. Their eyes met in the flickering light, a moment of silent recognition passing between them, recognition of mutual attraction, of unexpected connection, of the strange alchemy that had transformed strangers into something more in the space of a single evening. When Ethan's hand rose to gently touch her cheek, Amara didn't pull away. When his gaze dropped to her lips in silent question, she answered by closing the distance between them. Their first kiss was tentative, a gentle exploration that quickly deepened as suppressed desire flared between them. Ethan's arms encircled her with tender strength, and Amara allowed herself to be drawn against the solid warmth of his chest, her own arms wrapping around his neck as the kiss intensified. Years of self-imposed solitude melted away beneath his touch, beneath the sweet urgency of his lips on hers, her throat, the sensitive hollow behind her ear. The storm beyond the cabin walls seemed to fuel their passion, each crash of thunder and flash of lightning heightening senses already alive with newfound discovery. When they finally drew apart, both breathing heavily, Ethan rested his forehead against hers. "Amara!" he whispered, her name a caress on his lips. No further words were needed as she rose from the sofa, taking his hand and leading him toward the bedroom. In the soft glow of lamplight, they found in each other an answer to loneliness neither had fully acknowledged. Their bodies spoke a language more eloquent than words. Ethan's touch was reverent yet passionate, discovering the curves and hollows of her body with exquisite attention. Amara matched his intensity, her natural reserve giving way to an abandon that surprised and delighted them both. Together they created a world apart from time and circumstance, a sanctuary where only sensation and connection mattered. Their coming together was like the storm itself, powerful, primal, and ultimately transformative. In Ethan's embrace, Amara found herself truly seen for perhaps the first time in her adult life. Not just her beauty, which had always drawn attention, but her strength, her vulnerability, her essence. Afterward, they lay tangled in sheets and each other, the storm gradually receding as they drifted between wakefulness and slumber. Ethan's fingers traced lazy patterns on the smooth skin of her back as Amara rested her head on his chest, listening to the steady rhythm of his heartbeat. "I never do this," she murmured, feeling strangely compelled to explain the unprecedented nature of their intimacy. "Neither do I," Ethan replied, pressing a kiss to her forehead. "Not like this." The simple exchange held no promises, no expectations beyond the acknowledgement of a connection neither had anticipated. As sleep finally claimed them, the storm's fury spent at last, Amara allowed herself the luxury of feeling completely, if temporarily, whole. Chapter 4. Gwen's Whispered Secrets. Morning arrived with crystalline clarity, the storm-washed air so pure it seemed to amplify light and color. Sunlight streamed through Amara's bedroom window, casting golden patterns across the rumpled sheets where she lay, watching Ethan sleep. In repose, his face revealed a vulnerability absent in waking. Long lashes casting shadows on his cheeks. The stern line of his mouth softened. Amara studied him with a mixture of wonder and growing uncertainty. Last night's passion had been real, powerful and transformative, but daylight brought clarity and, with it, questions. Who was this man, really? What place could he possibly have in her carefully constructed life, and what had last night meant to him? A meaningful connection, or merely a pleasant diversion during a storm? As if sensing her scrutiny, Ethan's eyes opened, revealing irises the color of whiskey held to sunlight. For a moment he seemed disoriented, then recognition dawned, followed by a smile that kindled warmth in the pit of Amara's stomach. "Good morning," he said, voice husky with sleep, as he reached to touch her face with gentle fingers. "Good morning," she replied, fighting the impulse to lean into his touch, to allow the physical connection to silence her rational mind. Ethan propped himself up on one elbow, eyes traveling over her features with undisguised appreciation. "You're even more beautiful in daylight," he observed. Amara felt heat rise to her cheeks. Last night's abandon had been replaced by a shyness she hadn't anticipated. "The storm's passed," she said, changing the subject as she sat up, drawing the sheet around herself. Ethan glanced toward the window, where blue sky was visible beyond the aspens. "So it has." His expression grew thoughtful. "Amara, about last night." "You should probably check your car," she interrupted, suddenly afraid of what he might say, what promises he might make that real life would render impossible. "The roads will be clearing. You'll want to reach your meetings." Confusion flickered across his features, but he nodded slowly. "Of course." The easy intimacy of the night gave way to an awkward morning ritual of shared bathroom space and quiet breakfast preparations. Amara moved about her kitchen with practiced efficiency, hyper-aware of Ethan's presence as he made phone calls, rescheduling appointments disrupted by the storm. Over coffee and toast, they spoke of practical matters, road conditions, power restoration, the storm's damage to Park City. Neither mentioned the passion they had shared, nor the connection that had transcended physical desire. It hung in the air between them, acknowledged but unaddressed. "I should check out of my guest house," Ethan said as he helped clear the breakfast dishes. "I have meetings in Salt Lake City this afternoon." "Of course," Amara replied, maintaining a composure that belied the tumult of her emotions. Part of her wanted to ask when, if, she would see him again. A more cautious part warned against such vulnerability. When the moment of departure arrived, they stood on her porch in the crisp aftermath of the storm. The mountains gleamed in the distance, freshly washed and brilliant against the azure sky, indifferent to the small human drama unfolding in their shadow. "Amara," Ethan began, taking her hands in his. "Last night was unexpected, extraordinary." She nodded, unable to dispute either characterization. "I'll be in Utah for another week," he continued. "I'd like to see you again, properly, dinner perhaps?" The invitation hung between them, fraught with possibilities both exhilarating and terrifying. Amara looked up into his face, seeking insincerity and finding none, yet something held her back, the knowledge that their worlds were incompatible, that whatever began between them would inevitably end when he returned to his urban existence. "I'd like that," she heard herself say, even as her mind questioned the wisdom of prolonging a connection that could only lead to heartache. Ethan's smile was worth the risk, she decided, a flash of genuine pleasure that transformed his handsome face. He leaned down, pressing a kiss to her lips that was both promise and farewell. "I'll call you," he said, his hand lingering on her cheek before he pulled a business card from his wallet. "My private number is on the back." Amara watched him drive away, sunlight gleaming on his car's polished surface as it disappeared around the bend. The small rectangle of heavy cardstock in her hand. Ethan Carter, CEO, Sustainable Heights Development, made their encounter suddenly tangibly real. This hadn't been a dream or a fantasy, but a genuine connection with a man who moved in circles far beyond her small mountain town. A beautiful memory, she told herself firmly as she returned to her cabin, nothing more. She placed his card in a drawer of her bedside table, not quite ready to integrate it into her daily reality, but unwilling to discard it entirely. The promised call never came, though Amara found herself reaching for her phone with unconscious hope each time it rang in the days that followed. By the week's end, she had resigned herself to the truth. Ethan Carter with his wealth and sophistication, had returned to his real life, leaving their storm-born connection behind. Perhaps it was better this way, she reasoned. Better a perfect memory than a messy, doomed attempt at bridging their disparate worlds. Life resumed its familiar patterns, the rhythm of her shop's daily operations, quiet evenings by the fire with books for companionship, the simple pleasures of mountain living. Yet something had changed within Amara herself. The night with Ethan had awakened feelings long dormant, reminding her that beneath her careful self-sufficiency beat a heart capable of passion and connection. When the first symptoms appeared, Amara attributed them to a winter virus, the fatigue, the nausea that arrived like clockwork each morning, the peculiar sensitivity to smells that had never bothered her before. All seemed indicative of a seasonal illness. It was Mrs. Larson, stopping by the shop with homemade soup, who first suggested an alternative explanation. "You're glowing, dear," the elderly woman observed, studying Amara with shrewd eyes. "And you've been under the weather for weeks now. Have you considered you might be expecting?" Chapter 5. Life's New Path. The pregnancy test confirmed what her body had been telling her for weeks. Amara was carrying Ethan's child. The realization brought a chaos of emotions. Fear, wonder, disbelief, and beneath it all a quiet, fierce joy that surprised her with its intensity. She sat on the edge of her bathtub, the plastic test still in her trembling hands, as reality settled over her like freshly fallen snow. A child, their child, created during that single night of connection amid a raging storm. The poetry of it wasn't lost on Amara, even as practical concerns began to crowd her thoughts. A practical woman by necessity, Amara quickly assessed her situation. She had her shop, modest savings, a small but comfortable home. She was healthy, resourceful, and accustomed to independence. Yet the prospect of raising a child alone filled her with both determination and trepidation. That night, she placed a protective hand over her still fluffy abdomen and whispered, "Hello, little one. I didn't expect you, but I already love you more than I thought possible." The following weeks brought physical challenges, morning sickness that lasted well into the afternoons, a bone-deep fatigue that made even simple tasks monumental, strange cravings that sent her searching Park City's small grocery store for pickles and chocolate at odd hours. But these physical manifestations were easier to manage than the emotional landscape she now navigated. Her first instinct was to contact Ethan. The business card still waited in her bedside drawer, his private number, an invitation she hadn't used. But as her finger hovered over her phone, doubt intervened. He hadn't called as promised. Would he welcome news of an unplanned pregnancy, or see it as an unwelcome complication? Perhaps even an attempt to trap him into a relationship he didn't want. "He has a right to know," she told her reflection one morning, as she noticed the first subtle changes in her body. A slight fullness to her breasts, a softening around her jawline. After days of indecision, Amara tried the number, only to receive an automated message that it was no longer in service. A search for Ethan's company revealed it was headquartered in New York, with no direct contact information for its CEO. She considered writing a letter, but hesitated, uncertain what to say or how to say it. How did one inform a virtual stranger that a single night of passion had created a life? She drafted multiple versions, each sounding more awkward and inadequate than the last. "Dear Ethan, you may not remember me, but we shared a night during a storm in Park City. Mr. Carter, I'm writing to inform you of an unexpected consequence of our brief acquaintance. Ethan, I'm pregnant with your child. I don't expect anything from you, but thought you should know." Each attempt ended crumpled in her wastebasket, the words never quite capturing the complexity of their situation or the mixture of independence and longing that characterized her feelings. Ultimately, the decision was made through inaction. Each day that passed made disclosure seem more difficult, more fraught with potential for misunderstanding. By the time her pregnancy became visible, Amara had accepted that she would raise this child alone, just as her aunt had raised her. "We'll be fine," she whispered to the life growing within her, one hand resting on her swelling abdomen. "We have each other." At night, however, when the mountain silence was broken only by the occasional owl's call, Amara allowed herself to imagine an alternative reality, one where Ethan had called, as promised, where they had discovered their connection went deeper than a single night, where they now prepared for their child's arrival together. These thoughts she kept carefully contained, like precious fragile objects stored away for safekeeping, never examining them in daylight's harsh clarity. As her body changed, so did her daily routines. Mountain Haven's hours were adjusted to accommodate her decreasing energy. The high shelves that had required a stepladder became display space for only the lightest items. Regular customers noticed the changes in her appearance and offered congratulations along with unsolicited advice. Sleep now while you still can. Ginger tea for the nausea. Dear, you're carrying low. Definitely a boy. Miss Larison became a particular source of support, bringing home cooked meals and helping with the heavier work around the shop. My sister raised 3 on her own, she told Amara one evening as they sat on the cabin's porch. It's not easy, but it shapes a special kind of strength in both mother and child. The nursery took shape gradually, a small room transformed with pale yellow paint. Gender nouveau, Amara explained to Miss Lorson, though she suspected the older woman was right about her carrying a boy. A hand-me-down crib from a customer whose children had outgrown it. A rocking chair found at Park City's antique store and refurbished with new cushions. On the walls, Amara painted a mural of mountain landscapes and woodland creatures, working late into evenings when her energy returned briefly. In her 7th month, feeling her child's movements grow stronger each day, Amara finally made peace with Ethan's absence. Whether he would have welcomed fatherhood or not had become irrelevant. This child was hers to raise, to love, to guide through life's complexities. If someday their paths crossed again, she would handle that bridge when they came to it. And so began Amara's journey into motherhood. Solitary, but not lonely. Challenging, but filled with purpose. She took childbirth classes alone, sitting among couples who exchanged loving glances and held hands through breathing exercises. She assembled furniture with determination and the occasional help of Liam from the coffee shop, who had long harbored feelings for her but respected her clear boundaries. When her son was born on a perfect summer day, Noah Ethan Grace, named for her father and, privately, for the child's absent father, Amara experienced love in its purest, most overwhelming form. Looking into the tiny face that somehow combined her features with Ethan's, the shape of his eyes, the curve of his chin, she felt no regret, only gratitude for the storm that had brought this miracle into her life. "Hello, Noah?" she whispered to the swaddled infant in her arms. "We're going to have quite the adventure, you and I." The years that followed were filled with the joys and challenges of single parenthood. Noah grew from a curious infant who rarely slept more than 3 hours at a stretch to a determined toddler who tested boundaries with impressive creativity. His first word, moon, spoken while pointing at the night sky from their porch, delighted Amara. His first steps, taken boldly toward a squirrel in their yard, terrified and thrilled her in equal measure. By his 4th birthday, Noah had developed a distinct personality, thoughtful, observant, with flashes of stubborn determination that sometimes made Amara laugh in recognition of traits inherited from both parents. It was around this time that he began asking the inevitable questions about the empty space in their family picture. "Where's my daddy?" he inquired one evening as Amara tucked him into bed, his expression serious beyond his years. "Your daddy lives far away," Amara answered, having prepared for this moment. "He doesn't know about you, but that doesn't mean he wouldn't love you if he did." "Why doesn't he know?" Noah persisted, his amber eyes, so like Ethan's, wide with confusion. Amara chose her words carefully. "Sometimes grown-ups meet, and then their paths go in different directions. Your father and I met during a storm, just for one night. We didn't have a way to find each other again. Is he looking for us?" Noah asked with the simple hope of childhood. The question pierced Amara's heart. "I don't know, sweetheart, but I do know that you are loved, so very loved, exactly as you are." As Noah grew older, his questions became more nuanced. At 5, he became fascinated with superheroes and began casting his unknown father in that role. A powerful, benevolent figure who built environmental marvels and might someday appear in their lives. Amara neither encouraged nor discouraged this fantasy, understanding her son's need to create meaning from absence. "Does my daddy build tall buildings that help animals?" he asked one day, inspired by a children's book about urban wildlife habitats. "He builds beautiful places where people live and work," Amara answered truthfully. "And yes, he cares about making them good for the environment." These small truths satisfied Noah for a time, allowing him to construct a father figure that was part reality, part childhood imagination. Amara watched this process with a mixture of tenderness and concern, wanting her son to have a healthy understanding, but fearing the inevitable disappointment if fantasy and reality never aligned. Throughout these years, she scanned newspapers and business journals whenever she visited Salt Lake City, searching for any mention of Ethan Carter. Occasionally, she found his name associated with luxury developments in Colorado and California, but never with enough personal information to justify reaching out. Once, she saw a photo of him at a charity gala, handsome in a tuxedo, a blonde woman on his arm. The caption identified her as Sophia Bennett, prominent architect and girlfriend of sustainable development magnate Ethan Carter. The image sent a pang through Amara, though she had no right to jealousy. Ethan had moved on with his life, as she had with hers. Their paths had crossed for a single passionate night and diverged just as quickly. That their brief connection had resulted in Noah was a miracle, but not one that entitled her to any claim on Ethan's affections or future. By Noah's 6th birthday, Amara had built a good life for them both. Mountain Haven prospered under her care, expanding to include a small section of children's toys and books. Their cabin remained modest, but had been improved with a larger back deck where Noah could play within sight of the kitchen window. They had friends, routines, seasonal traditions, the framework of a happy childhood, despite the absence of a father figure. Noah himself was thriving, bright, kind, with his mother's artistic sensitivity and a determined confidence that sometimes reminded Amara painfully of Ethan. His resemblance to his father grew more pronounced with each passing year, visible in the set of his jaw, the analytical way he approached problems, the charismatic ease with which he made friends. "You look just like your daddy when you concentrate," she told him once, as he built an elaborate structure from blocks, his brow furrowed in exactly the same way Ethan's had been when describing a challenging project. Noah had looked up, pleased. "Really? Do I look like him a lot?" "You have his eyes," she said softly, "and his smile. But your heart, that's all your own." It was this resemblance that made the arrival of a certain wedding invitation all the more unsettling. The elegant cream envelope appeared among the usual bills and catalogs one crisp October day, exactly 5 years after the storm that had changed Amara's life. Inside, embossed silver lettering announced the wedding of Sophia Bennett, sister of Amara's friend Clara, to Mr. Ethan Carter, to be held at the Grand America Hotel in Salt Lake City the following month. Amara stared at the invitation, her hands suddenly cold despite the warmth of her shop. Ethan, getting married in Utah. The coincidence seemed too great, the timing too precise to be mere chance. Yet how could Clara have known? Amara had never revealed the name of Noah's father, had shared only that he had been a brief connection during a difficult time. "Everything okay?" Clara asked, having hand-delivered the invitation during her lunch break. "You look like you've seen a ghost." In a sense she had. The name on the elegant card had conjured Ethan's image with vivid clarity. His amber eyes, the feel of his hands on her skin, the sound of his voice in the firelit darkness of her cabin. "I'm fine," Amara managed, tucking the invitation into her pocket. "Just surprised. I didn't realize your sister was engaged." Chapter 6, The Path to Revelation, Whirlwind Romance, Clara explained, perching on the edge of Amara's sales counter. They met through business connections in New York about 2 years ago. Sophia's architecture firm won the bid for one of his major projects, and apparently, sparks flew. She lowered her voice conspiratorially. "Mom's beside herself with joy. Sophia landing one of the country's most eligible bachelors. Ethan Carter is practically royalty in the development world." "I've heard the name," Amara said carefully, arranging a display of hand-knitted scarves with more attention than necessary. "His company does sustainable luxury developments, right?" "Exactly. Worth millions, maybe billions by now, and committed to environmental causes, which makes him practically a unicorn among the super wealthy." Clara studied Amara curiously. "You really do look pale. Are you sure you're okay?" With effort, Amara composed herself. "Just a headache coming on. The invitation is lovely. Please thank your sister for including me." "Including you and Noah," Clara corrected. "Sophia specifically asked that you bring him. She knows how hard it is for single parents to find sitters for formal events." The thought of bringing Noah to Ethan's wedding, of the two meeting without either knowing their connection, sent a wave of dizziness through Amara. Yet what excuse could she give for declining? Clara was her closest friend in Park City, and refusing to attend her sister's wedding without explanation would damage their relationship irreparably. "That's very thoughtful," Amara managed. "Noah will be excited. He's never been to a formal event before." After Clara left, promising to check in about carpooling arrangements closer to the date, Amara closed her shop early and walked to the elementary school, her mind churning with impossible scenarios. By the time she collected Noah from his after-school program, she had reached no clear decision, beyond the recognition that this wedding presented both tremendous risk and potentially life-changing opportunity. "We've been invited to a special party in Salt Lake City," she told Noah as they walked home hand in hand through golden afternoon light. "A wedding? With beautiful clothes and cake and dancing?" "Like in the movies?" he asked, eyes lighting with excitement. "Just like in the movies," she confirmed, smiling despite the tumult in her heart. "We'll need to find you a very handsome suit." In the weeks that followed, Amara oscillated between impulses. One moment, she was determined to attend the wedding, to introduce Noah to Ethan in that public setting, allowing fate to determine the outcome. The next, she considered fabricating an illness, an emergency. Anything to avoid the confrontation that seemed increasingly inevitable. What right did she have to disrupt Ethan's wedding day with such momentous news? Yet what right did she have to keep father and son from knowing each other, especially when chance had delivered this opportunity directly into her hands? The moral and emotional complexity of her situation kept Amara awake at night, staring at her ceiling as she imagined various scenarios, none of which seemed to offer a perfect resolution. In her darkest moments, she contemplated taking Noah and leaving Park City altogether, starting fresh somewhere Ethan would never find them. But she knew such drastic action would only delay the inevitable questions, the eventual search for identity that every child undertakes. As the wedding date approached, Amara prepared with methodical precision, focusing on practical details to avoid dwelling on the emotional complexity ahead. She found Noah a charming suit that made him look disconcertingly like his father, and for herself, a dress of deep emerald silk that complemented her dark coloring and fit her slender figure perfectly. She considered writing Ethan a letter to be delivered before the wedding, explaining the situation and allowing him to decide how to proceed. But what would such a letter say? "Congratulations on your upcoming marriage. By the way, we have a 6-year-old son you never knew about." Every approach seemed fraught with potential for misunderstanding, for accusations of manipulation or opportunism. In the end, Amara decided to attend without preemptive disclosure. She would see Ethan, assess the situation, and perhaps find a private moment to speak with him before introducing Noah. The decision brought no peace, but at least it offered direction after weeks of paralyzing indecision. The night before the wedding, as she laid out their clothes and packed an overnight bag for their stay in Salt Lake City, Noah watched from his bedroom doorway. "Mommy, will there be other kids at the wedding?" he asked, fingers fidgeting with the edge of his pajama top. "I'm sure there will be," she assured him, though in truth she had no idea. "And will the man getting married be like a king, with a crown and everything?" Amara smiled at his imagination. "No crown, sweetheart, but he is an important man who builds beautiful buildings that don't hurt the environment." Noah's eyes widened. "Like a superhero for the planet?" "Something like that," she agreed, her heart constricting at the innocent admiration in her son's voice. Admiration for the father he didn't know he would soon meet. That night, sleep eluded Amara. She lay awake, watching moonlight silver the mountains outside her window, wondering what tomorrow would bring. Would Ethan recognize her immediately? Would his bride sense their history? And most concerning of all, would Noah somehow intuit the connection between himself and the man at the altar? As dawn broke over the Wasatch Range, Amara rose and dressed, with the careful movements of someone preparing for battle. The face that looked back at her from the mirror showed no trace of her restless night, only a woman of uncommon beauty, her dark eyes clear and determined, her composure a shield against the emotional storm ahead. "Today we face the past," she whispered to her reflection. "And then we let it go." Chapter 7. The Question That Changed Everything. The Grand America Hotel stood as a monument to luxury in downtown Salt Lake City, its elegant architecture and manicured gardens designed to impress the most discerning guests. As Amara guided Noah through its marble-floored lobby, she felt distinctly out of place, despite her carefully chosen attire. This was Ethan's world, a realm of wealth and privilege far removed from her simple mountain life. "It's like a castle," Noah whispered, his small hand clutching hers tightly as he gazed wide-eyed at crystal chandeliers and ornate furnishings. "It is rather grand," Amara agreed, consulting the wedding information card. "The ceremony is in the Imperial Ballroom. We need to find the elevators." They joined the stream of elegantly dressed guests making their way toward the event. Amara scanned faces nervously, relieved when she spotted Clara waving from near a massive floral arrangement. "You made it!" her friend exclaimed, embracing Amara before bending to Noah's level. "Don't you look handsome, Noah? There are some other children in the family room next to the ballroom. They have games and activities for during the ceremony. Can I go see?" Noah asked, bouncing slightly with excitement. After confirming with the attendant that she could retrieve him before the ceremony began, Amara allowed Noah to be led to the children's area. His absence left her feeling strangely vulnerable, as though her son had been a shield against the emotional confrontation ahead. "You look gorgeous," Clara complimented, linking arms with Amara as they moved toward the ballroom. "That color is perfect on you. We need to find you a single groomsman to dance with at the reception." Amara managed a smile, though the thought of meeting Ethan as just another wedding guest made her stomach clench with anxiety. "Tell me about the bride," she said, seeking distraction. "What's Sophia like?" "Brilliant, driven. Perfect match for Ethan, really. She's in sustainable architecture. They met when her firm bid on one of his development projects." Clara lowered her voice conspiratorially. "Though, between us, I think his wealth was a significant attraction. Sophia's always been ambitious." They entered the ballroom, where hundreds of white chairs faced an elaborate altar, decorated with cascading white orchids and silver branches. Ice sculptures caught and refracted light from crystal chandeliers, and a string quartet played softly in one corner. The effect was stunning and intimidating in its opulence. "I should get Noah," Amara said suddenly, eager for her son's presence. "The ceremony must be starting soon." In the adjacent family room, she found Noah engaged in animated conversation with a boy about his age, both of them constructing something elaborate from building blocks. "Time for the wedding, sweetheart," she called. "We need to find our seats." Noah looked up, his expression briefly disappointed before excitement reclaimed him. "Can Lucas sit with us? His mom is one of the bridesmaids." The other child looked at Amara hopefully. "Please? I don't know anybody else." Unable to refuse their matching pleading expressions, Amara agreed, leading both boys back to the ballroom, where guests were now taking their seats. They'd found places about halfway back, offering a clear view of the altar where Ethan would soon stand to meet his bride. "Now, remember," Amara whispered to Noah as the music shifted to indicate the ceremony's imminent beginning. "During the wedding, we have to be very quiet and still. It's like at story time in the library." Noah nodded solemnly, though his fingers fidgeted with his suit jacket buttons. Beside him, Lucas mimicked his serious expression, both boys temporarily subdued by the formality of the occasion. The first sharp stab of recognition came when the groomsmen entered from a side door. Among them walked a man Amara vaguely recalled from that night 5 years ago, a friend Ethan had mentioned during their hours of conversation by the fire. If he was part of the wedding party, it confirmed beyond doubt that the groom was indeed her Ethan, the man who had changed her life in ways he couldn't possibly imagine. When Ethan himself appeared, moving to stand before the altar, Amara's breath caught painfully in her throat. 5 years had added subtle sophistication to his handsome features. Light creases at the corners of his eyes, a touch of silver at his temples. But he remained essentially unchanged, tall and commanding in his tailored tuxedo. He stood with the quiet confidence she remembered, his gaze focused on the ballroom's main doors through which his bride would soon appear. "Is that the superhero?" Noah whispered, tugging at Amara's sleeve. "Shh," she reminded him gently, unable to form words beyond that simple admonition. Her heart pounded with such force she feared those seated nearby might hear it. The wedding march began, prompting guests to rise and turn toward the entrance. Amara stood on shaky legs, grateful for the movement that temporarily directed attention away from her ashen face. The bride appeared, radiant in an elaborate gown that had undoubtedly cost more than Amara earned in several months. Sophia Bennett was classically beautiful, blonde, slender, perfect in every visible detail. As the bride glided toward the altar on her father's arm, Amara risked another glance at Ethan. The expression on his face, tender, awestruck, sent a lance of pain through her chest. He loved this woman. Whatever Amara had meant to him during that storm-tossed night, it paled beside what he felt for the bride approaching him now. The ceremony proceeded with practiced elegance, the officiant speaking of love and commitment in measured tones. Amara focused on maintaining her composure, on breathing evenly despite the vice that seemed to have closed around her lungs. Beside her, Noah squirmed occasionally, but remained relatively still, his eyes wide as he observed the adult ritual unfolding before him. When the officiant asked if anyone knew any reason why the couple should not be united in matrimony, Amara felt a hysterical laugh building in her throat. What would these elegant guests say if she stood and announced that the distinguished groom had a 6-year-old son sitting in the audience, a child he didn't know existed? The moment passed. No objections were raised. The ceremony continued toward its inevitable conclusion. It happened during the exchange of rings, that pivotal moment when the union becomes all but complete. Noah, perhaps bored by the lengthy proceedings, tugged at Amira's sleeve again. "Mommy, I need the bathroom," he whispered, loudly enough for several nearby guests to glance their way. "Can you wait just a few minutes?" Amara whispered back, reluctant to create a disruption by leaving now. Noah shook his head emphatically. "It's an emergency." Lucas, hearing this exchange, helpfully pointed toward a side door. "There's one right there. My mom showed me earlier." Before Amara could stop him, Noah was scooting past knees and slipping into the aisle, moving with the peculiar half-run of a child trying to be quiet while in urgent need. Amara rose to follow, mortified by the timing, but Noah had already reached the front of the ballroom, his path taking him directly past the wedding party. What happened next unfolded with the surreal quality of a dream. Instead of continuing to the side door, Noah stopped abruptly, staring up at Ethan. Something in the child's expression, recognition on some primal level, froze Amara in place halfway down the aisle. "Are you the superhero who builds houses that help the planet?" Noah asked, his clear voice carrying in the hushed ballroom. A ripple of amused laughter moved through the guests. Ethan, momentarily startled from his ceremonial focus, looked down at the small boy with curiosity rather than annoyance. "I try to be," he answered with gentle humor, his deep voice striking a chord of memory so powerful that Amara felt physically shaken by it. Noah nodded, accepting this answer with the serious consideration only children can give. Then, with the devastating directness of youth, he asked the question that would alter everything. "Will you marry my mom? She's really pretty and makes the best pancakes ever." Chapter 8. Hearts Unraveled. The laughter that followed was heartier but tinged with awkwardness. An adorable child's innocent question, nothing more. But Amara, now hurrying forward to retrieve her son, saw Ethan's expression change as his gaze lifted from Noah to find her in the aisle. Recognition dawned instantly, followed by shock, confusion, and something deeper that Amara couldn't interpret. For a suspended moment, they stared at each other across 5 years of silence and secrets, the crowded ballroom seeming to recede around them. "Amara!" Ethan's voice was barely audible, yet she heard it as clearly as if he had shouted. Time seemed to crystallize in that moment. The ornate ballroom with its glittering chandeliers, the hundreds of elegantly dressed guests now hushed in collective curiosity, the string quartet's music faltering as musicians sensed the shift in atmosphere. Amara felt as though she were watching the scene from outside herself, unable to move or speak, as the carefully constructed walls between past and present crumbled. The bride's voice cut through their connection. "Ethan, what's going on?" Sophia stood at the altar in her designer gown, confusion giving way to irritation as her fiancé's attention remained fixed on the woman and child in the aisle. The officiant beside her shifted uncomfortably, glancing between bride and groom with growing concern. Ethan's gaze dropped back to Noah, truly seeing him now. The shape of his eyes, the set of his jaw, the features that mirrored his own. Understanding bloomed on his face with devastating clarity. His hand, still holding the wedding ring meant for Sophia, trembled visibly. "I apologize," Amara managed finally, reaching Noah and taking his hand. "Come on, sweetheart, let's find that bathroom." "But Mom, I asked him a question." Noel protested, unaware of the emotional earthquake he had triggered. "He didn't answer if he wants to marry you." And few nervous titters arose from the guests, quickly silenced as the gravity of the situation became apparent. This was no longer a cute child's interruption, but something far more consequential. Murmurs rippled through the assembled guests as Ethan took a step toward them, his face pale beneath its tan. "Wait," he called, his voice carrying through the now buzzing ballroom. The single word froze Amara in place, her escape halted by the raw emotion in his tone. Noah looked up at her, confusion evident in his small face. "Mommy, are we in trouble?" "No, sweetheart," she whispered, squeezing his hand reassuringly while her mind raced for a way out of this impossible situation. The bride's expression hardened as she looked from Ethan to Amara and Noah, some feminine instinct perhaps warning her that this was more than a cute child's interruption. "Ethan, what is happening? Do you know this woman?" The question hung in the air, demanding an answer that would irrevocably change multiple lives. Sophia's father, seated in the front row, rose slightly in his seat, his protective instinct evident in his posture. For a moment Ethan seemed torn between worlds, the carefully orchestrated future before him and the unexpected past that had suddenly materialized. His eyes never left Amara's face as he spoke. "Sophia, I need a moment, please." The quiet desperation in his voice silenced the growing murmurs. Guests exchanged glances, uncomfortable witnesses to what was clearly becoming a deeply personal drama. The wedding officiant cleared his throat awkwardly. "Perhaps we should take a brief recess," he suggested, his professional demeanor barely masking his discomfort. Sophia's face flushed with embarrassment and growing anger. "A recess? In the middle of our wedding?" "Ethan, you can't be serious." But Ethan was already moving down the steps from the altar, his focus entirely on Amara and Noah. The guests watched in stunned silence as he approached them, tension palpable in the elegant ballroom. Several of Sophia's relatives whispered furiously to each other, while Ethan's friends exchanged concerned glances. "Amara," he said again when he reached them, his voice low and intense. Is he? He couldn't complete the question, but his eyes, moving between her face and Noah's, made his meaning unmistakable. The resemblance between father and son, standing mere feet apart, was suddenly so obvious that Amara wondered how anyone could miss it. "Not here," Amara whispered, acutely aware of hundreds of curious eyes upon them. "Please." Clara appeared at Amara's side, her expression a mixture of confusion and dawning comprehension. "Amara, do you know Ethan?" she asked, the pieces finally connecting in her mind. "He's the superhero, Mommy," Noah insisted, looking between the adults with growing uncertainty. "Why is everyone acting weird?" The innocent question, in any other context, might have drawn smiles, but in the charged atmosphere of the interrupted wedding, it only heightened the tension. Ethan's gaze remained fixed on Noah, drinking in every detail of the son he hadn't known existed until this moment. Before anyone could respond, Sophia's voice cut through the murmurs, sharp with humiliation and fury. "Ethan, return to the altar immediately, or I walk out right now." The bride's ultimatum hung in the air between them, forcing a decision that couldn't be postponed. Several bridesmaids had gathered around Sophia, offering support while glaring daggers at Amara, who wished desperately that the polished marble floor would open and swallow her whole. Ethan closed his eyes briefly, his expression pained. When he opened them, they held a certainty that hadn't been there moments before. "I'm sorry, Sophia," he said, his voice carrying easily in the hushed ballroom. "I can't continue until I understand what's happening here." A collective gasp rose from the guests. Sophia's mother let out a small cry of distress. The wedding planner, sensing disaster, began moving discreetly toward the central players in this unfolding drama. Sophia's face crumpled in disbelief before hardening into cold fury. With remarkable composure, she turned and walked back down the aisle, her father hurrying after her as whispers erupted throughout the room. The beautiful train of her gown swept behind her like a departing tide, leaving devastation in its wake. "Ladies and gentlemen," the best man announced, stepping forward with admirable presence of mind. "The ceremony will be temporarily delayed. Please enjoy refreshments in the adjacent reception area while we attend to a family matter." The guests rose uncertainly, most casting curious glances at Ethan, Amara, and Noah as they filed out. Some looked sympathetic, others judgmental, but all were clearly riveted by the unexpected drama. "Perhaps somewhere private would be best?" the wedding planner suggested, appearing beside them with professional efficiency despite the unprecedented situation. "There's a conference room through here." In a daze, Amara allowed herself and Noah to be guided into an adjacent room, Ethan following close behind. As the door closed on the chaos they'd created, blessed quiet descended, broken only by Noah's worried voice. "Mom, did I do something wrong?" The innocence of the question, the genuine concern in her son's eyes, nearly broke Amara's composure entirely. Here was her child, caught in an adult situation he couldn't possibly understand, worried that he had caused the tension crackling around him. Amara knelt before her son, smoothing his dark hair with trembling hands. "No, sweetheart, you didn't do anything wrong. But I need to talk to Mr. Carter alone for a few minutes. Can you wait with the nice lady?" Noah looked unconvinced, his eyes darting between his mother and Ethan, who stood watching them with an expression of such longing that Amara had to look away. The wedding planner nodded her willingness, holding out her hand to Noah. "I have some cake in my office," she offered with practiced diplomacy. "Would you like some while your mom talks? I think I even have some dinosaur napkins." The mention of dinosaurs, Noah's current obsession, successfully diverted his attention. "What kind of dinosaurs?" he asked, allowing himself to be led toward the door. "Tyrannosaurus Rex, I believe," the planner replied, winking at Amara over Noah's head. "And maybe some Triceratops." As the door closed behind them, the temporary reprieve of focusing on Noah vanished, leaving Amara and Ethan alone with 5 years of unspoken truths between them. The conference room, with its elegant furnishings and panoramic views of Salt Lake City, seemed an absurdly formal setting for such an intimate confrontation. Ethan stood motionless, his hands hanging at his sides, wedding rings still clutched in his right fist, physical evidence of the ceremony they had just derailed. His face reflected a storm of emotions: shock, confusion, wonder, and something that might have been anger or joy, or some complex blend of both. Amara remained near the door, her back pressed against it as though seeking support from the solid wood. Her heart pounded so forcefully she was certain Ethan must hear it across the room. What could she possibly say to explain the magnitude of what she had kept from him? How could words bridge the chasm of 5 years? Finally, Ethan broke the silence, his voice rough with emotion. "He's mine," he stated rather than asked. "Our son." From that night, during the storm. The directness was so characteristic of the man she remembered that Amara almost smiled despite the tension. Ethan had never been one for evasion or pretense. "Yes," she answered simply, unable to deny the truth that was written in Noah's features. Ethan ran a hand through his carefully styled hair, disheveling it in a way that made him look more like the man she had known during the storm, less polished, more human. He paced a few steps, then stopped, turning to face her fully. 5 years, he said, his expression cycling through bewilderment, pain, and something like wonder. "He's 6 years old, and I never knew he existed. Why didn't you tell me, Amara?" Chapter 9. Truth's Revelation. Ethan winced. A relationship founded more on compatibility and shared goals than passion. Sophia and I make sense on paper, both driven professionals with similar values. "And you love her?" Amara asked, needing to understand the full scope of the situation they now faced. Ethan's hesitation was answer enough. "I care for her deeply," he said finally, "but seeing you again, seeing our son." The conference room door burst open before he could finish, admitting a furious Sophia still in her wedding gown, followed by her equally angry father and a mortified Clara. "So this is why you couldn't commit to the ceremony?" Sophia demanded, her voice ice-cold as she surveyed Amara with contempt. "Some woman from your past shows up with a child, and you abandon me at the altar?" "Sophia, please," Ethan began, rising to his feet. "This isn't what it looks like," she cut him off. "Because it looks like your past caught up with you in spectacular fashion, Ethan. It looks like you have a child you never bothered to mention during our entire relationship." "I didn't know," Ethan said quietly. "I had no idea Noah existed until today." Sophia's bitter laugh held no humor. "And I'm supposed to believe that? The great Ethan Carter, who tracks every detail of his projects with obsessive precision, somehow missed the fact that he fathered a child? Please. It's the truth, Amara interjected, unable to let Ethan not bear the full brunt of Sophia's anger. We met only once, 5 years ago. There was a storm. He needed shelter. We never saw each other again after that night. Sophia turned to Amara, her beautiful features twisted with disdain. So you're admitting you slept with him during a one-night stand, and now you show up at our wedding with his alleged child? How convenient! I didn't know it was his wedding, Amara protested, looking to Clara for support. I had no idea until I received your invitation. Clara stepped forward, her expression troubled. It's true, Sophia. Amara never mentioned Ethan's name to me. I had no idea there was any connection when I invited her. Connection? Sophia repeated, her voice rising. Is that what we're calling it when someone sleeps with my fiancé and produces a bastard child? That's enough, Ethan said sharply, all traces of hesitation gone from his voice. You will not speak about my son that way. Sophia! The possessive claim, my son, hung in the air between them, changing everything. Sophia stared at Ethan for a long moment, her anger giving way to cold clarity. Your son, she repeated softly. You've known this child for all of 5 minutes, and already he matters more to you than our 2-year relationship? Sophia, please, Ethan began, his tone gentler. We need to talk privately. This situation is quite clear, she finished for him. You made your choice the moment you stepped away from that altar, Ethan. She pulled the diamond engagement ring from her finger and placed it precisely on the conference table. The wedding is obviously canceled. I'll let you explain to the 300 guests why. With dignity that Amara couldn't help but admire, Sophia turned and left the room, her father following after, one disgusted look at Ethan. Clara lingered, her expression torn between loyalty to her sister and concern for her friend. I'm so sorry, she said to both of them. I had no idea. It's not your fault, Amara assured her. You couldn't have known. Clara nodded uncertainly. I should go help Sophia. I can't even imagine what she's feeling right now. She paused at the door. The guests are being told there's been a family emergency. You might want to leave through the service entrance to avoid them. Left alone again, Amara and Ethan faced each other in charged silence, the ruins of his wedding and the future of their son hanging between them. Before either could speak, the office door opened, and Noah emerged, chocolate frosting decorating the corners of his mouth. Mommy, can we go home now? The lady said the wedding is canceled. Ethan's expression as he looked at his son was a complex mixture of wonder, regret, and dawning joy. He knelt to Noah's level, his movements careful, as though approaching a wild creature. Hello, Noah, he said softly. My name is Ethan. I'm an old friend of your mother's. Noah studied him with the direct gaze that always reminded Amara so much of his father. Are you still a superhero even without the wedding? A smile touched Ethan's lips, the first since the ceremony's dramatic interruption. I try to be, though I don't have any special powers. That's okay, Noah said seriously. My mom says real heroes just do their best to help people. Do you help people? I hope so, Ethan replied, his voice thick with emotion. I really hope I do. Watching them together, father and son, connected by invisible threads of shared DNA and temperament, Amara felt tears threaten. Whatever happened next, this moment of first recognition was a gift she had never expected to witness. We should go, she said, gathering her composure. This has been more than enough excitement for one day. Ethan stood, his eyes never leaving her face. Amara, we need to talk, really talk. About Noah, about us, about everything. I know, she acknowledged. But not here, not now. Too much has happened today. He nodded, accepting the wisdom of her words, even as reluctance showed in his expression. May I come to Park City tomorrow, to see you both? The question held implications beyond its simple phrasing, acknowledgement of Noah as their shared priority, recognition that whatever lay between them must be addressed. Amara hesitated only briefly before nodding. We'll be home, she said. Noah would like to show you his dinosaur collection, I'm sure. Chapter 10. Shattered glass, open windows. The drive back to Park City passed in a blur of Noah's excited chatter and Amara's distracted responses. The boy, resilient as always, had already incorporated the day's extraordinary events into his 6-year-old understanding of the world. As they ascended the winding mountain road, leaving the valley's haze behind for clearer air and wider vistas, Amara found herself caught between two realities. In one, she was simply a mother driving her son home after an eventful day. In the other, she was a woman whose carefully constructed life had just been upended, whose most significant secret had been revealed in the most public and dramatic fashion possible. She glanced at Noah in the rearview mirror. His small face was animated as he recounted details of the wedding venue, the crystal chandeliers that had entranced him, the ice sculptures he'd been forbidden to touch, the enormous cake he'd glimpsed being prepared in a back room. Nowhere in his excited narrative did he mention the disruption he had innocently caused, or the emotional maelstrom that had followed. "Is either my friend now?" he asked suddenly, as they crested the pass that led into the mountain valley they called home. The question jolted Amara from her thoughts. "Yes, sweetheart, I think he'd like to be your friend, very much." She chose her words carefully, still uncertain how much to reveal about the true nature of their connection. The aspens along the roadside had shed most of their golden leaves, their bare branches stretching toward a sky so intensely blue it almost hurt to look at. Winter would arrive soon, transforming their mountain home with snow and silence. Amara had always loved this transitional season, but now it seemed to reflect the liminal space she occupied in her own life, between what had been and what would be. "Is he going to come visit us at our house?" Noah pursued, ever practical in his concerns. Amara hesitated only briefly. "Tomorrow, actually." Ethan had insisted on following them back to Park City immediately, but Amara had persuaded him to wait. "There's been enough drama for one day," she told him. "Noah needs time to process, and so do I. Come tomorrow when things are calmer." He had reluctantly agreed, though the naked longing in his expression as he watched Noah return from the wedding planner's office had nearly undone her resolve. Here was a man discovering fatherhood in the most unexpected way, already fiercely protective and hungry for connection with his newfound son. Noah pondered this information carefully, his brow furrowed in concentration, an expression so like Ethan's that Amara felt a fresh wave of guilt for keeping them apart, however justified her reasons had seemed. "Is he my dad?" her son asked finally, his voice uncharacteristically serious. "He looks like me. Lucas says I need a dad." The directness of the question caught Amara off guard, though she'd known it was inevitable. Noah had always been uncannily perceptive, picking up on subtleties that escaped many adults. She glanced at her son's reflection in the rear-view mirror, his expression earnest and hopeful in equal measure. "Yes, Noah, Ethan is your father." The admission felt both terrifying and liberating, a truth finally spoken aloud after years of careful omission. For a moment, Noah was silent, processing this confirmation of what he had perhaps already intuited on some level. Then came the inevitable follow-up that children his age were so adept at formulating. Why doesn't he live with us, like Lucas's dad lives with him? How to explain the complexities of adult relationships to a 6-year-old mind? The chance encounter during a storm. The night of passion without commitment. The miscommunications and missed connections that had kept them apart. Amara searched for an explanation that would satisfy, without burdening her son with adult complexities. "Ethan didn't know about you until today," she explained carefully, slowing the car as they approached the outskirts of Park City. "Remember how I told you we met during a storm and then couldn't find each other again? He's been looking for us in his way, just as we sometimes wondered about him." This simplified truth seemed to satisfy Noah for the moment. His next question came from a different angle entirely. "Does this mean I can have a bike for Christmas?" "Lucas says dads always get bikes for Christmas." The unexpected shift in subject, so typical of children his age, startled a laugh from Amara, releasing some of the tension she'd carried since the moment Noah had approached Ethan at the altar. "We'll have to see what Santa brings," she answered, grateful for the momentary return to normal childhood concerns. By the time they reached their cabin, Noah's thoughts had moved on to which dinosaurs he would show his newly discovered father tomorrow, a detailed inventory that carried them through dinner preparations and his bedtime routine. Only once, as she tucked him into bed, did he return to the day's revelations. "Mom," he asked, already drowsy with imminent sleep. "Are you happy that we found my dad?" The question pierced straight to the heart of everything Amara had been avoiding confronting. Was she happy? Terrified, certainly, anxious about what Ethan might expect or demand, guilty for the years he'd lost with his son. But beneath those complicated emotions ran an undeniable current of what? Relief? Completion? Perhaps even joy. "Yes, sweetheart," she answered softly, discovering the truth of it as she spoke. "I'm happy that you'll get to know your father. He's a good man." Noah nodded, satisfied with his assessment. "I think he's nice," he murmured, eyelids growing heavy. "And tall." Within minutes he was asleep, his breathing deep and even, utterly untroubled by the adult complications swirling around him. Amara lingered at his bedside, watching his peaceful face in the glow of his dinosaur nightlight. How resilient children could be, she marveled, how accepting of change when presented with honesty and reassurance. That night, after Noah was finally asleep, Amara sat on her porch, watching moonlight silver the mountains. The events of the day seemed almost hallucinatory in their surreal quality. Finding Ethan at the altar, Noah's innocent question shattering carefully constructed lives, the recognition in Ethan's eyes when he truly saw his son for the first time. The mountain air carried the scent of pine and wood smoke, familiar and comforting despite the turmoil in her thoughts. Stars scattered across the black velvet sky in patterns she had memorized over years of solitary evenings on this same porch. How many nights had she sat here, cradling infant Noah, later answering the curious questions of a toddler, and always aware of the absence that shaped their family as surely as their presence. Now that absence had a face, a voice, intentions she couldn't predict. Ethan had seemed genuinely moved by the discovery of his son, immediately protective and possessive, but what did that mean for their future? Would he be content with occasional visits, shared holidays, the traditional arrangements of separated parents? Or would he want more? Custody arrangements, a role in decision-making, perhaps even a claim on Noah's daily life? And what of his abandoned bride? Sophia Bennett came from a prominent Salt Lake City family with social connections and influence. Would she seek revenge for her public humiliation? Could she make trouble for Amara? Or worse, for Noah? Questions circled in Amara's mind like autumn leaves caught in a mountain whirlwind, impossible to grasp or settle. The only certainty was that tomorrow would bring Ethan to their door, and with him, the beginning of a new chapter she had never anticipated. What would tomorrow bring? What did Ethan want from this unexpected reunion? And what did she want? The last question was perhaps the most difficult to answer. For 5 years, Amara had defined herself primarily as Noah's mother, her own needs and desires secondary to his well-being. Now, suddenly, she was forced to confront her identity as a woman as well, a woman with unresolved feelings for the father of her child. Sleep proved elusive that night. Amara moved restlessly between her bedroom and Noah's, checking on him as though reassuring herself that he remained safely in her care. She rearranged items in the living room, dusted shelves that didn't need dusting, selected and rejected outfits for the morning. All displacement activities to avoid the storm of emotions that threatened whenever she stopped moving. Dawn found her at the kitchen table, nursing a cup of tea gone cold, watching the first pale light illuminate the mountains. There was something cleansing about witnessing the world renewed each morning, she thought, a reminder that, regardless of human drama, some rhythms remained constant and dependable. Noah woke with his usual exuberance, bouncing into the kitchen with dinosaur pajamas, rumpled and hair standing in sleep-tousled peaks. "Is today when my dad comes?" he asked immediately, the events of yesterday apparently sorted and filed in his mind overnight. "Later this afternoon," Amara confirmed, smiling despite her fatigue. "He wants to see where we live and meet your dinosaurs." "I need to organize them," Noah declared with sudden seriousness. "T-Rex should go first because he's the king, but maybe Triceratops should be next, because Dad said he likes him best." The casual use of Dad, so natural from Noah, so jarring to Amara's ear, was yet another reminder of how quickly children adapted, how readily they embraced change that adults found destabilizing. The morning passed in a flurry of domestic activity, Noah insisting on cleaning his room. "So Dad will see I'm responsible," Amara baking fresh bread and simmering a pot of soup, more for the comfort of familiar tasks than from any belief that Ethan would be interested in a meal. She found herself viewing their modest home through his eyes. The hand-me-down furniture she'd lovingly restored, the simple decorations crafted from natural materials, the overall impression of comfortable functionality rather than luxury or style. Would he find it charming or pitiable? Would he see it as evidence of her capable independence, or as proof that she and Noah could benefit from his financial resources? The questions nagged at her as she straightened cushions and arranged wildflowers in a ceramic vase. By early afternoon, Noah had positioned himself at the front window, watching the driveway with the single-minded focus only children can maintain. "Tell me when you see his car," Amara instructed, as she went to change her outfit for the third time, settling finally on a simple dress that flattered without suggesting she had made any special effort. When Ethan's car pulled into her driveway a short while later, Amara felt a surreal sense of déjà vu, as though the intervening 5 years had somehow compressed into a single night, bringing them full circle to where they had begun. He emerged from the vehicle looking both familiar and foreign. The same tall, confident presence, but now dressed in casual jeans and a sweater rather than the formal attire of yesterday's aborted wedding. Noah, who had been watching at the window since breakfast, burst through the front door before Amara could stop him. "Ethan, I got my dinosaurs ready to show you. I have 14 of them, and T-Rex is the biggest, but a Velociraptor is the smartest." The unrestrained enthusiasm in her son's greeting brought tears to Amara's eyes. How many times had she imagined this scene? Noah meeting his father, neither with reservations nor resentment, just pure childish excitement at a new connection. The reality unfolding before her on her own front porch was both more ordinary and more extraordinary than any scenario she had envisioned. Chapter 11. Mountain Truths continued. The directness of his approach mirrored their first meeting. No games, no pretense, just honest communication. "What do you want, Ethan?" Amara asked, needing clarity before she could contemplate any future involving him. The question hung between them in the crisp mountain air, weighted with 5 years of separate lives and 1 night of shared passion. Below them, Park City nestled in the valley, its lights beginning to twinkle as dusk descended. Inside the cabin, they could hear Noah humming to himself as he watched his movie, blissfully unaware of the momentous conversation taking place on the porch. Ethan considered her question carefully, his gaze moving from her face to the mountains and back again. "I want what I've missed," he said finally. "Time with my son, a chance to know him, to be part of his life in whatever way you'll allow." The sincerity in his voice was unmistakable, but Amara needed more. Needed to understand the full scope of his expectations before she could begin to navigate this new reality. "And beyond that?" she pressed, her hand wrapped around her mug for warmth that had nothing to do with the cooling evening. "You just walked away from your wedding yesterday. There's bound to be fallout, professional implications, social consequences. Noah and I can't be drawn into chaos." Ethan's expression hardened slightly, a glimpse of the shrewd businessman beneath the earnest father. "I'm well aware of what I've done, Amara. I've spent the night dealing with some of those consequences already. Sophia's father is on the board of my company's largest investment group. Her architecture firm handles 3 of my current projects. The personal and professional ramifications will be significant." He paused, running a hand through his hair in that familiar gesture she remembered from their night together. "It's already begun, in fact. I've received 17 messages from Sophia's father since this morning, ranging from legal threats to attempts at buying me off. 3 board members have requested an emergency meeting. My PR team is working overtime to craft a statement that won't make me sound like either a villain or a fool." "Do you regret it?" she asked quietly, needing to know if his actions had been impulse rather than conviction. "Talking away from the ceremony? No." His certainty was absolute. "The timing and public nature of it all, yes. I wish I could have spared Sophia that humiliation. But the moment I saw Noah, the moment I recognized him as mine, continuing with the wedding became impossible." Amara nodded, understanding that particular clarity. The moment of revelation had left no middle ground, no possibility of proceeding as though nothing had changed. She had seen the recognition in Ethan's eyes at the altar. The instant when Noah ceased being an abstract concept and became flesh and blood, a living extension of himself. "And what about your life now? You live in New York, run an international company. Noah and I are here in Park City. Our lives couldn't be more different." Lives can change, Ethan said simply. Mine already has, irrevocably, in the space of 24 hours. The quiet confidence in his statement reminded Amara of their night together, the way he had spoken of his vision for sustainable development with the same unwavering certainty. This was a man accustomed to reshaping reality to match his intentions. "What are you saying?" she asked. Ethan moved closer, resting his forearms on the porch railing beside her, their shoulders nearly touching in the fading light. His profile was striking against the backdrop of mountains. Strong jawline, straight nose, determination evident in every line. "I'm saying that night 5 years ago wasn't just a beautiful memory for me, Amara. It was a benchmark against which every subsequent relationship failed to measure. I looked for you in the weeks after, came back to Park City repeatedly, hoping to find you. When I couldn't, I tried to move on, to build a life that made sense on paper. But seeing you yesterday, it was like finding a missing piece of myself I'd forgotten was gone." The words, so closely aligned with her own unacknowledged feelings, brought tears to Amara's eyes. "We barely know each other," she protested weakly, even as something within her responded to the truth in his words. One night during a storm, no matter how meaningful, isn't a foundation for anything real. "It was real," Ethan countered, turning to face her fully. "What happened between us that night wasn't just physical attraction or circumstantial intimacy. We connected on a level I've never experienced with anyone else, and I think you felt it too." He took her hands in his touch warm and steady. "I remember everything about that night, Amara, not just the passion, though God knows that was unforgettable. I remember how you spoke about losing your parents, about your aunt's strength, about finding beauty in small moments. I remember telling you things I'd never shared with anyone, about my mother's struggle with depression, about my doubts regarding my father's business ethics, about my dreams for creating something meaningful in the world." His recall of these intimate details, conversations they'd shared by firelight as the storm raged outside, stunned Amara. She had assumed those hours of connection had faded for him, overwhelmed by the physical aspects of their night together, or simply diminished by time and distance. "I remember too," she admitted softly. "I've often wondered if I imagined the depth of our connection because of what came after, finding myself pregnant, raising Noah alone. It would have been easier if it had just been physical, just a storm and two strangers seeking warmth. But it wasn't," Ethan said with quiet certainty. "And now fate or chance or whatever you want to call it has brought us back together in the most unexpected way, through our son." The word "our" hung between them, both acknowledgement and promise. Inside the cabin, they could hear Noah singing along with his movie, his clear voice a reminder of what was truly at stake in this conversation. He was right, though Amara had spent years convincing herself otherwise. That night had transformed her, had opened her heart in ways she hadn't believed possible after so much loss. But acknowledging that truth meant risking everything: the careful independence she'd built, the protective barriers around her heart, the simple life she and Noah had created together. "What are you proposing?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "A beginning," Ethan answered simply. "Time together, all three of us, to discover if what we felt that night can grow into something lasting. I'm not asking you to upend your life or make decisions you're not ready for. Just a chance to know you again, to know our son, to see if we might create something beautiful from this unexpected reunion." "And logistically?" Amara asked, the practical side of her nature, requiring concrete details. "You run a major company headquartered across the country. Noah has school, friends, a routine here. I have my shop. This isn't just about feelings, Ethan. It's about real life." Ethan nodded, acknowledging the validity of her concerns. "I own a home in Park City already, part of my development research. It's been sitting empty most of the year. I can work remotely for extended periods, fly back to New York when necessary." He leaned forward, his expression earnest. "My COO has been handling more day-to-day operations recently anyway. This past year I've been stepping back, focusing more on vision and strategy." "You'd move here just like that?" The ease with which he proposed such a significant life change both impressed and worried Amara. "Not permanently, not immediately," he clarified. "I'd split my time at first, gradually spending more weeks here than in New York. See how it works for all of us." His smile held a touch of self-deprecation. "I'm not suggesting a perfect solution, Amara. I'm suggesting we start where we are and figure out the rest together." Through the cabin window, they could see Noah, now sprawled on the living room floor, colored pencils scattered around him, deeply engaged in drawing what appeared to be a family of dinosaurs. The sight of him, so innocent, so unaware of the adult complexities being negotiated on his behalf, brought both tenderness and trepidation to Amara's heart. "And if it doesn't work?" she asked, voicing her deepest fear. "If we try this and discover that night was just an anomaly, just perfect timing and chemistry, but nothing sustainable? What happens to Noah then, once he's grown attached to having you in his daily life?" It was the question that had haunted her throughout the day, the fear that opening their small, secure world to include Ethan might ultimately cause Noah pain if things fell apart. Ethan's expression grew solemn. "That's a fair concern, but consider the alternative. Denying him the chance to know his father, denying us all the possibility of creating a family out of fear that it might not work perfectly." He paused, choosing his next words carefully. "I can't promise we'll succeed, Amara, but I can promise that, whatever happens between us, my commitment to Noah is absolute. He's my son. That doesn't change, even if our relationship doesn't develop as I hope it will." The proposition was both terrifying and exhilarating. Amara looked out at the mountains, their eternal presence reminding her that some things were worth the risk, that beauty often emerged from life's most unexpected storms. "Noah needs stability," she said finally. "Whatever happens between us, I won't have him hurt by false expectations or broken promises." "I understand," Ethan replied solemnly. "I give you my word that my commitment to him is absolute and unconditional, regardless of what may develop between us." His sincerity was palpable, his eyes holding hers with an intensity that echoed that long-ago night. Amara felt something shift within her, fear giving way to cautious hope, solitude to possibility. "I'd like to tell him myself," she said, "that you're his father. I mean, properly." Ethan nodded, emotion visible in the tightening of his jaw. "I'd like that. And Amara, thank you for raising our son with such love, for being open to me now, for everything." The gratitude in his voice, the humility beneath his usual confidence, touched something deep within her. This was a man willing to upend his carefully constructed life for a child he'd just met, for a connection 5 years dormant. Whatever else lay between them, that commitment deserved her respect. Inside, the movie had ended, and Noah's voice called out, "Mom, can I have some juice?" "We should go in," Amara said, taking a deep breath. "Together." Ethan's smile in response held both gratitude and anticipation, the expression of a man being offered a gift he had never expected to receive. As they moved toward the door, his hand brushed hers briefly, the small contact sending a familiar warmth through her veins. Whatever came next, Amara realized, would be unlike anything she had planned or imagined for her life. But perhaps that was fitting, since nothing about their story had ever followed an expected path. They called Noah from his drawing, settling him between them on the sofa. With simple words appropriate to his age, Amara explained that Ethan was indeed his father, that they had found each other again after being separated for many years, and that Ethan wanted very much to be part of their lives now. Noah processed this information with characteristic seriousness, his amber eyes, so like his father's, moving from one adult face to the other. "So, you're my real dad?" he asked Ethan directly. "I am," Ethan confirmed, voice rough with emotion. "And you want to be my dad now, like come to my soccer games and stuff?" "More than anything in the world." Noah considered this, then delivered his verdict with the uncomplicated clarity of childhood. "Cool. Can we get ice cream to celebrate?" The simple response broke the tension, drawing surprised laughter from both adults. In that moment of shared amusement, looking at their son's earnest face, Amara felt the first real stirrings of what might become a family. Unconventional, unexpected, but potentially stronger for the journey that had brought them together. Chapter 12. Love's Full Circle. Over the weeks that followed, they established a new rhythm to their lives. Ethan moved into his Park City home, a modernist glass and stone structure that reflected his professional aesthetic but lacked the warmth of Amara's cabin. He spent mornings working remotely, afternoons with Noah after school, and many evenings with both of them, gradually integrating himself into the daily routines and rituals that had previously been exclusively theirs. The transition wasn't without challenges. Noah experienced moments of confusion about his suddenly expanded world, occasionally testing boundaries to reassure himself of both parents' continued love. Amara struggled with sharing parental decisions after 5 years of sole authority. Ethan found himself navigating the unfamiliar terrain of fatherhood while managing a company from 2,000 miles away, and never realized how much 6-year-olds talk, he confessed to Amara one evening as they sat on her porch after Noah had finally gone to sleep. It's like living with a podcast that never ends and constantly changes topics. She laughed, remembering her own early adjustment to Noah's verbal development. Wait until he discovers why as his favorite question. That's when the real philosophical debates begin. These quiet moments together, after Noah was asleep, over coffee while he was at school, during walks through town when he ran ahead to examine interesting stones or leaves, allowed them to rebuild their connection, slowly, carefully. They shared stories of the intervening years, filling in the gaps of their separated lives. Ethan described his company's growth, the challenges of maintaining ethical standards in an industry driven by profit margins, his gradual disillusionment with the lifestyle his success had afforded him. "I had everything society tells us we should want," he told her during one such conversation. Penthouse apartment overlooking Central Park, invitations to exclusive events, business accolades, financial security, and it felt hollow, empty. He paused, watching golden autumn light play across the mountains. "I kept thinking about that night here, the stillness, the connection, the feeling that nothing was missing." Amara in turn shared the journey of her pregnancy and early motherhood, the fear and joy of bringing Noah into the world alone, the small triumphs and exhausting challenges, the way her son had transformed her understanding of love and purpose. "It wasn't always easy," she admitted. "There were nights I sat on this porch after he was finally asleep, too tired to even cry, wondering if I could possibly be enough for him." She smiled at the memory. But then morning would come, and he'd look at me with complete trust, and somehow we'd find our way through another day. Yet beneath these inevitable adjustments ran a current of deepening connection. Each day brought new discoveries, Ethan learning that Noah preferred his sandwiches cut in triangles, Amara finding that Ethan still read poetry before sleep, Noah delighting in the discovery that both he and his father built elaborate structures from random objects around the house. They were careful with each other, Ethan and Amara, neither rushing toward rekindled romance nor denying the attraction that still simmered between them. Their focus remained firmly on Noah, on building the foundation of trust and consistency he needed from both parents. 6 months after the wedding that wasn't, Park City welcomed winter with its customary splendor. Snow transformed the landscape into a glistening wonderland, and Christmas approached with quickening excitement, especially for Noah, who now had 2 parents to share in holiday traditions. "Can we get a really big tree at Dad's house?" he asked one morning over breakfast. "His ceilings are super tall." The casual use of Dad, now firmly established in Noah's vocabulary, still occasionally caught Amara by surprise, though it had quickly become natural to all of them. "I think that can be arranged," Ethan replied, exchanging a smile with Amara over their son's head. "We should probably check with your mom about her tree plans too, so we don't duplicate ornaments." The consideration, so simple yet so meaningful, was characteristic of how Ethan had approached his integration into their lives. Always respectful of established routines, sensitive to the balance Amara had maintained for years, yet gradually introducing new traditions and experiences that enriched rather than disrupted. On a crisp December evening, Amara arrived at Ethan's home for what had become their weekly family dinner. Noah had asked to stay overnight, his room at Ethan's house now filled with toys and books, a space truly his own, and Amara had agreed, recognizing the importance of nurturing the father-son bond that grew stronger each day. Ethan greeted her at the door, tall and handsome in casual attire, his home warmed by firelight and the scent of pine from the Christmas tree he and Noah had selected. What had once been a showplace of contemporary design now held evidence of a child's presence. Colorful artwork on refrigerator doors, a bookshelf of children's stories, small shoes by the entrance. "He's putting the finishing touches on a surprise," Ethan explained, taking her coat. "He's been working on it all afternoon." "Dad, is Mom here?" Noah called from upstairs. "She is," Ethan answered, Should we come up? No, stay there. I'm almost done. The sound of small feet thundering down the stairs preceded Noah's appearance, his face alight with excitement. Come to the living room, both of you. He pulled them by their hands to stand before the Christmas tree, where a small, wrapped package sat beneath the lowest branches. It's for both of you, he explained. Open it together. Puzzled but willing, Amara and Ethan sat side by side on the sofa as Noah handed them the clumsily wrapped gift. At the same time, he instructed seriously. Together, they removed the paper to reveal a framed photograph, one they hadn't seen before. It showed the three of them at the autumn festival 2 months earlier, captured by a street photographer without their knowledge. In the image, they were laughing together, Noah between them, their faces alight with genuine joy. Mrs. Larson helped me get it framed, Noah explained proudly. It's our first family picture. The simple description, family picture, caught at Amara's heart. She looked up to find Ethan watching her, his eyes reflecting emotions that mirrored her own. It's perfect, Ethan told Noah, his voice husky. Thank you, son. The best present, Amara agreed, pulling Noah into a hug. I have an idea, Noah announced when she released him. Since it's almost Christmas, can we all sleep here tonight like a family sleepover? We could make hot chocolate and watch Christmas movies and wake up together tomorrow. The innocent request hung in the air between the adults, laden with implications beyond a child's understanding. Amara glanced at Ethan, finding in his expression careful neutrality, leaving the decision entirely to her, making no assumptions. That sounds lovely, she heard herself say. A family sleepover. Noah whooped with delight and raced to the kitchen, announcing his intention to start preparing hot chocolate immediately. Left alone, Amara and Ethan regarded each other in the soft glow of Christmas lights, the framed photograph still held between them. He's happy, Ethan said quietly. Happier than I've ever seen him, Amara agreed. You've been amazing with him, Ethan, better than I could have hoped. Ik. Yashwu. Makes it easy. Ethan echoed her words from months before, a smile touching his lips. But it's not just him. I've been thinking about... The quiet admission shifted something between them. Acknowledgement of feelings long contained, for their son's sake. I know, Amara replied simply. Ethan set the photograph carefully on the coffee table and turned to face her fully. When we agreed to focus on Noah, to see if we could build something lasting without complicating it with our own relationship, I thought it was the right approach. And it was for him. But Amara... He took her hand, his touch sending that same current through her that it had 5 years ago during a storm. These months have only confirmed what I knew the moment I saw you again, what I've known since that night in your cabin. Let me finish, he said gently. I'm not asking for promises or commitments you're not ready to make. I'm just telling you that my feelings haven't changed. If anything, watching you with our son, seeing your strength and kindness every day, has only deepened them. Amara looked down at their joined hands, at the contrast of his larger fingers entwined with hers. She had protected her heart for so long, first from the pain of orphan childhood, then from the risks of vulnerability as a single mother. Yet here was a man who had upended his entire life for a chance to know his son, who had shown patience and respect for her boundaries, who looked at her now with the same intensity he had during that storm-tossed night. I've been afraid, she admitted. Afraid of letting myself believe in this, in us, afraid that what we felt that night was just circumstance and chemistry, not something that could withstand real life. And now? Ethan asked, his voice soft. Amara raised her eyes to his. Now I think maybe it was both, circumstance and something deeper, something that's only grown stronger as I've watched you become a father to our son. The honesty of her words brought a smile to Ethan's face, warming his eyes to that burnished amber that had first captured her attention years ago. Slowly, giving her every opportunity to withdraw, he leaned toward her. Their lips met in a kiss that bridged 5 years of separation in an instant. What began as gentle exploration quickly deepened, awakening memories of passion and connection that neither time nor distance had diminished. "Mom, Dad, the hot chocolate is ready," Noah's voice called from the kitchen, breaking them apart with soft laughter. "Perfect timing," Ethan murmured against her lips, As always, Amara agreed, rising from the sofa but keeping his hand in hers. Together, they joined their son in the kitchen, where mugs of steaming chocolate, topped with enormous marshmallows, awaited them. Noah, oblivious to the significant shift in his parents' relationship, chattered happily about which Christmas movie they should watch first. As they settled on the sofa together, Noah between them, hot chocolate in hand, Christmas tree glowing in the corner, Amara felt a sense of completion she had never expected to find. Their journey had been unconventional, their family formed through chance and choice rather than traditional paths. Yet in this moment, with Ethan's arm stretched behind Noah to rest lightly on her shoulder, she knew they had found their way home. In the mountains of Park City, where a storm had once brought two souls together for a single night, a family was taking shape, not according to society's expectations or conventional timelines, but through love's persistent determination to find its way. Their snow fell gently outside the windows, and their son's laughter filled the room. Amara and Ethan exchanged a look of quiet understanding. A promise to nurture this precious gift they had been given, to honor the circle of love that had finally, after 5 years of separation, become complete.